Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to On Your Mental. This is the podcast where I share candid, open, and sometimes vulnerable conversations between men. And today is a little bit different because today it's just me. And if you can tell by the title of this episode, today I'm going to be talking about turning 25. Turning 25, what I want to do with On Your Mental, and I'll finally answer like the questions that have been left so far in episodes. Yeah, when this episode comes out, should come out on March 11th. That's my 25th birthday. So I'm going to get into just kind of how I feel about that and where I see things going with my life and with On Your Mental, with this project, what I hope for it. So yeah, I hope you all enjoy. I'm not sure what I'm going to say at this point, but I hope it turns out being a decent episode. Thank you for checking it out, and I hope you enjoy. All right, first order of business is I'm going to be answering questions that were left. So before I get into talking about being 25 and what I want to do with On Your Mental going forward, what I hope for long term, let me get these questions out the way because they've been sitting for a couple weeks. So first question, I'll put it here. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. Just like around here. I don't know, somewhere here. First question is from Nathan Young. Nathan's one of my longtime friends, by the way, so shout out to Nathan. Nice to see that you're watching the videos. I appreciate you doing that. Nathan left a comment 3 weeks ago asking what's the meaning of life, and fuck if I know, man. I don't know. Obviously this is one person's opinion and it probably doesn't represent a lot of people, but anyways, I don't know, the way, I guess when you ask like what the meaning of life is, the way that I interpret that question is like, what do you think the purpose is for you to exist in life? Because I don't know if you can give life itself a meaning. I think that's a lot to ask, because other things are living. Grass is living, you know what I mean? So then if you think about like living organisms and stuff, then you might start saying like, oh, the meaning of life is just to grow and whatever, develop, whatever. For me, the purpose that I see in life is to help other people's lives. This is going to make me sound like some, oh, wow, he just wants to make the world better, whatever. Yeah, I think that my purpose in life, or the feeling that I have around purpose, is to make other people's lives better, if that's possible. Contribute in whatever way I can to make some sort of positivity in the world. What I mean by that is I think about things like growing up and one day becoming a father, for example. I want to be like the best possible father I could be, and I would want that to, I don't know, make my kids' lives better. I think about it with doing this podcast. I hope that this podcast is reaching people where it's making their lives feel better in some way. Maybe they're relating to some of the content, or they're hearing a story that touches them in some way, and they can take something or learn something from these conversations and make their life better. So yeah, that's what I think the meaning of life is, Nate, is just leaving the world better. I hope that's an okay answer. But yeah, leaving the world better, man. Second question is from Fanny. Fanny is Evan's girlfriend. For everybody who's watched, I think that was, what was it, episode 6 episode 6 with Evan. Yeah, to be honest, I had to double check. It was episode 6. Anyways, Fanny asked, why do men not leave the seat down for women? I don't know, because personally I do, even for myself. I think that's a weird thing to do, is leave the seat up. But maybe that comes down to just the household that I grew up in, right? Like I grew up with just me and my mom. I don't have any siblings. I don't have a dad. So it was just my mom and I. And so that maybe meant that I was taught from a very young age, put the seat down. I don't know if some people, if there are actual like parents out there that teach people not to. I think that's kind of weird. Yeah, it just seems like a courteous thing to do, but also the right thing to do. Like, to be candid and open, like, I don't know, if you're a guy, sometimes you got shit too. You know, you gotta, you're not gonna come in there and now you gotta move the seat down too. You should do it for yourself before you do it for anybody else. Like anything, you should do it for yourself before you do it for anybody else. So yeah, I don't know. I hope Evan doesn't leave the seat up. If he does, Yeah, I don't know. I don't do it. So that's the answer that I'm going to give you is I don't do it. And I feel like people who don't put the seat down are just kind of lazy. Sorry. All right, question number 3 is a good one. So obviously those first two were like shorter, sweeter, simpler. Question number 3 was left, and again, I'll put that up here on the screen. Question number 3 was left by Chelsea Lee. Chelsea, someone who I went to high school with. Yeah, hi Chelsea. The question that was left was, how do men talk about mental health with, I guess, different people in their lives, whether that's with other male friends, female friends, family members, and are there topics that you don't talk about at all? Are there different conversations that are had? Like, do they sound different between those different dynamics? Yeah, I think that's a really good question, actually, Chelsea. And I think it's the answer might not surprise you, but yeah, those conversations do differ. And also, thank you for saying the tattoos are cool. Anyways, yeah, I think that for me personally, when I talk with my guy friends, I've tried to be very intentional in being open with them. And I think that fits into why I'm doing this podcast too. I think it's important for men to be open with one another. And I, having grown up without siblings, without a father, I was very open with my mom. And so for me, like, my mom knows everything about me. Literally probably everything about me. And that has translated into the rest of my relationships. This is, again, just my own personal answer. So for me, I kind of approached all conversations with friends about mental health and about things that are on my mind the same way. That being said, there are friends that are closer to me than others. And so obviously those friends might know more about my life, but I would personally never hesitate to share anything, I would say, with anybody who I consider to be my friend, at least in my group of people that I've talked about and everybody that's been on this podcast already, for example. They're all people who I would share details of my life with, and when I'm going through something, they'll probably know that I'm going through something. What's interesting for me is just because of how close I am with my male friends, I think that these conversations don't happen as frequently with my female friends, and that might just be because I don't see them as often. But I know, and they know, that I have been open with them about how I feel, and whenever I'm going through something, they are well aware. But to answer your question outside of just my own experience, from seeing my friends, everybody has a different way of sharing. Everyone has a different way of communicating their feelings, if at all, and that's fine. People need to sort of come into their own when it comes to these kinds of things. You can't tell people how to share, and I'm guilty of doing that. Like, just recently, like, I was giving my friends a bad time about how I felt they were reacting to their lives and processing things in their lives. I was like, why aren't you just being more open, blah, blah, blah. And I was like kind of bashing them for the way that they were handling their own mental health. And that's something I shouldn't do. And it's something that I'm trying to get better at, because I kind of fall into this trap sometimes. And I don't know, I feel like, oh, my way should be the right way. And it's not for everybody, right? Like, people aren't comfortable sharing sometimes, and there's risk involved in sharing and being vulnerable. My cousin pointed that out to me when we were talking about this podcast. There's a risk when you choose to be vulnerable with another person. And so depending on the relationships that you have, so sticking to your question here, depending on the relationships you have, let's say that's male friends, female friends, family members, if you don't feel like the risk of sharing and being open is worth it, if you feel like the negatives could outweigh the positives in sharing, you might be like afraid of ridicule, you might be afraid of criticism, or you might think that there might just be backlash, you're less likely to share. I've been lucky in my life to have my mom be really receptive to anything that I ever talked about. And so growing up, that's carried through into all the rest of my relationships. It's just a decision that, okay, if I like you, if I'm getting along with you, like there's trust there. And so I can feel as though I can be open. And yeah, this is a very long answer to your question. I recognize that, but I think everybody deals with things differently. And what I hope from, and I'm going to touch on this later in this episode here, what I hope from this podcast is that men start to see value in sharing, in being open about their mental health or whatever is on their minds. That's the whole point of this podcast, is for people to feel like they can be open, right? So yeah, I hope that's a satisfactory answer. I don't know, but if it is, let me know, and then just leave another comment telling me that I did an okay job answering. If you want more, then tell me. That's fine. All right, now the last one. This is from Angelina Dean, and the question I think actually fits better into episodes because I think it's a pretty like loaded question as I'm looking at it right now. It says, please include a portion around green and red flags and relationships, friendships, and maybe even family dynamics that could affect men's day-to-day health. I think there's a lot there. The first two things, like green and red flags for relationships and friendships, I think that could fit into an episode. That's actually a really good idea. So if you're leaving this comment, I figure I can add that to an episode sometime. The other one about family dynamics, interestingly enough, I am planning on getting something out about that soon because, as I've mentioned at the start of this episode, I grew up without siblings. I grew up without a dad. I grew up with just my mom and I. And so that's a unique family dynamic, or maybe a less common family dynamic. And what's interesting is, out of my entire group of friends, everyone's family dynamic is different. I think there's only a few people that have parents that have stayed together, that are living in the same house that they grew up in, kind of thing, the same family the whole time, you know what I mean? So yeah, I will save those for actual episodes. I think those make really good topics. So thank you for the suggestion, Angelina. I appreciate that. All right, so why did I do that? So with questions out of the way, and also if people have more questions, feel free to ask. I always appreciate them, and I will eventually answer them like this too. With questions out of the way, I'm going to talk about how I feel turning 25. Shit. Yeah, when this episode is out, as I said, this is going to be my birthday. So happy birthday, bro. I hope you have a good one, man. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a milestone in a way. I mean, even like J. Cole, I mean, it's more of a extreme, but he talks about making it past 25. Like that is a milestone for some people, and I'm lucky to have grown up with the life that I've had. I feel very fortunate to be 25, moved out, renting, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with renting. Moved out, I'm living with Evan, as you all know, really enjoying that. Yeah, I think 25 is like a checkpoint. You know, I think it's a good time for me to reflect on where I'm at with my life, because younger, as a kid, I probably thought 25 was going to look different than what it's at right now. I think just about the only thing, when I'm thinking about like aspects of my life right now at 25 that I've managed to do that I thought I would have done as a kid when I was 25, is moving out. That's probably the only like major step that I feel represents or fits into my age. What I mean by that is, like, growing up when I was younger as a kid, I thought like, oh, by the time I'm 25, like I'm gonna be situated in my career, I'm gonna be making X amount of money, I'm gonna be, I don't know, in like some amazing relationship, I'm gonna have already met the person I'm gonna like marry or something like that. I don't know, because I have this naive like thought in my head like, oh, I gotta be a dad by 28. I don't know why 28 I thought was gonna be like that should be the age. But if you think about that as a trajectory, like shit, you got 3 more years to make that happen, to have a kid with somebody who's like that meaningful to you. Like that's, I don't know, good luck. Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy to be 25. I'm happy to be working on something like this. I'm so happy that I found this idea, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I like that it's giving me this sort of sense of control, which I feel like anybody needs in their life. If I could recommend that goes all the way back to the first episode of On Your Mental, was me talking about like, if you can find something that allows you to be creative, that allows you to have that freedom, do it. I think that's a big thing for me being 25. But yeah, I'm also excited. I'm excited to be 25. I'm excited for what's going to continue to happen in my life. It's funny, the conversation that I had with Ben in just the last episode, I went back as I was editing it, and when he was talking about the Matthew McConaughey quote, I went back and I watched the video and I watched his Oscar acceptance speech, and I think there's a lot of power or like wisdom in that speech. I think the idea of being able to chase and look forward to yourself in 10 years is huge. And so I've been thinking about that quote a lot since that conversation, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. When I was younger, I had this image of what's going to happen in my life. I had this image of all these ideals built on whatever experiences I'd had up until that point. What I've learned is that you can't plan your life. Things are going to be thrown at you. Things are going to come out of the blue. Opportunities, struggles, whatever it's going to be, are going to just present themselves, and you don't know when. And as much as like I'm a planner, I've been a planner for most of my life. I like to know sort of what my next moves are. When I started this podcast, I'll use this as an example. I'll give another one in a second. But when I started this podcast, I planned out the first 14 episodes before I shot one. I was thinking like well ahead, like before I even like knew what I wanted to do with this, I had already looked forward that much. Thinking back to like high school, I was like the one guy in my group of friends that would use their agenda, use their planner like religiously. Like I needed to have that thing so that I could plan out my week and my days. But your life at that point is so much more controlled and easier to grasp. I think that's something that has become like very apparent to me over especially the last year. Holy shit, COVID. Yeah, there's so much more going on in the world that just skews your whole trajectory. You don't know what's going to happen next. At no point growing up did I think we were going to live through a pandemic, right? I think that itself is something to take away as a lesson from the last year. Just you can't plan anything. You can't plan your life. Taking that and taking the quote from Matthew McConaughey talking about you looking forward to your hero being someone who's 10 years ahead, yourself 10 years later. I don't know where I'm going to be when I'm 35, right? But I know it's going to be somewhere better than I am now. Not that where I'm at now is a bad place at all. I'm very happy where I am. I'm excited where I am. And I'm looking forward to whatever's coming up. Who knows where I'm going to be when I'm 35. So that's all I'm doing now is I'm trying to take a wider step back on my own life, and just appreciate things for what they are and just roll with the punches, I guess, take things as they come. I think that's how I feel about turning 25. If I think of anything as I keep talking, I'll throw it back here. Actually, yeah, I think that for me, and this is gonna tie into what I'm gonna talk about with the podcast. You've probably heard me mention things about like comparing or the comparison mind state in previous episodes. That's something that I've carried with me throughout most of my years, and it's something I'm trying like very hard to let go of at this point because I'm finding it's holding me back in like a negative way, at least recently. I am really bad with comparing myself to other people, especially at my own age. I'll use a couple situations as examples. Let's talk about work. So thinking about like work and where you might be in a job, that's something that I've often compared myself to my peers with. So think about even just in my own workplace. Like when I was younger, let's say like 21, I started working where I'm working when I was 19. So let's say at like 21 or something, I was looking at somebody else who was 21. What role are they in? At that point, I was in a like slightly elevated role, and then it was like, oh, okay, somebody else here is 21. Are they in a higher role than me? If they are, how do I get there? That was something that I would do a lot, and I've tried. I don't think I do that anymore at work because it's detrimental to you. It weighs on you, and it puts this pressure on everything that you're doing. Another maybe more generally applicable thing or scenario where I compare myself is even just to my friends, and maybe they might not know this. So hey everybody, I often find myself comparing myself to my friends and where they're at. I think in the last episode with Ben, we talked about comparing ourselves to each other kind of physically. That's something definitely that I do. I look at people who are in better shape, like how am I going to catch up? And it depends on how you use that too. This is where I say it's starting to feel like detrimental and it's weighing me down and it's holding me back a bit, is like I can start to look at and feel defeated because it's like I'm not there and I've been putting in work and I'm not there yet. So that's why I'm trying to let go of that comparison feeling. But the other things I do, unfortunately, here's to being open and vulnerable. That's the whole point of this. So I guess it's my turn. Like I'll look at, and it's a shitty thing, I look at my friends and how much money they're making, and I think, why am I not making as much? I feel like I'm talented. I feel like I'm a good employee. Where can I get it? Like how could I get to that point? Yeah, it's stupid. I mean, I've looked at my friends' relationships and I've wondered, like, I don't know, why have I not been able to like keep one working long term? Relationships are a funny thing for me because I don't know, I care about them. Who doesn't care about relationships? What a stupid thing to say. Everybody cares about relationships. Y'all know that. But I don't know, like from talking with Evan and hearing his story about being with Fanny and just how well they mesh together. Like I've felt that with the person who I was with before, Gemma, and it's like, I don't know, I wonder sometimes like why didn't things just like mesh up at the right time? So I compare even relationships with my friends where I'll see like Or like, oh man, like gift giving with relationships and stuff too. You'll compare stuff like that and it can just weigh on you so much. Anyways, the point of me saying all this stuff is comparison mind states and just views or things that I'm trying to stop in my life and trying to remove in my life. That's not an easy task. Yeah, you can't just cut that out. You know, it's like it's a behavior, it's a pattern, it's a thing that you do. You can't just all of a sudden change who you are. But it's, I guess, recognizing that. That's what I'm trying to get better at, is recognizing when I'm doing it and asking myself, why am I doing that? Like, what does it benefit? I guess that falls into me thinking about turning 25 and looking forward to the rest of my life and life not being planned. There's no sense in comparing myself to other people because it's not my life. You know, my life is my own life. Another song from J. Cole. Anybody who has not listened to this, you should absolutely go listen to it. The song Love Yours by J. Cole is something that I've listened to more closely in recent years because it talks about the idea that there is no such thing as a life that's better than yours. You can look at it from whatever angle you want. Of course, you can be like, oh, talking about money. You can be like, oh, somebody has more money than me at this point. They're better off than I am. But that's not your life. Your life is going to be your life, and you got to focus on what's going to be okay in yours, and you got to just recognize that you're here and you're doing what you're doing. So anyways, I'll talk kind of about what I want from this project then. I mean, that fits into like what I'm doing with my life, and it goes back to that first question from Nathan about like what's the meaning of life. And for me, the purpose I have is I want to be able to give back to other people, and I want other people's lives to be improved by what I'm doing. And I hope, at least from some of the feedback that I received from On Your Mental, that it's doing that for some people. Even just listening to a conversation can shift a perspective a little bit or open up a dialogue in your home. People were sharing with me, like, after watching one of the first episodes, like they started asking similar questions to their partner. And that opened up this conversation in their own home that they might not have had otherwise, because it was like they didn't see other people having that conversation. Now they saw it. It's like, why don't we have this conversation? So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, there's been a lot of stories actually that people have shared about listening to the podcast so far. And so I'm really happy with what it's doing, because that's exactly what I wanted it to do. Was I wanted it to impact people in a positive way. When I put out the first episode, I felt like an emotion that I hadn't felt before. And I texted my friends about it. I texted my close friends, and I like was explaining how I was feeling, because I remember putting the episode out. Obviously I was like excited, and I knew like I had this rush of just support coming in. Everybody was like sharing the stories, and I really appreciate it, by the way, people who are doing that. It goes a long way, because I know it's then reaching more people. The message is reaching more people, and that's the whole point. And it was just this outpouring of support, and I felt like I did something. You know, I felt like I was doing something meaningful, and maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was just the first time where I felt like this is really gonna help somebody. When I put the first episode out, I had a lot of energy, and I didn't want to like stay home and like look at it and focus on it. I just left. So I went to the gym. I remember driving to the gym, just feeling like this well of like emotion coming up, and I started like tearing up on the way to the gym. And by the time I got there and I parked, I didn't go in for like the first 5-10 minutes, because I was sitting in my car crying, but it was like happy crying. And that was the emotion that I've never felt before. It was weird. It was, it was like an uncomfortable feeling to feel, but I knew it was because I was doing a right thing. I was doing something that was going to help people, and all of my friends were just sharing how excited they were for me in putting this out, and how proud of me they were for doing this. And thank you to all of you who did reach out, especially if that first episode, and anyone who continues to reach out and say anything about this. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me that people are receiving this well. Yeah, but I sat there and I cried because I felt like this was the start of something that was going to become a big part of my life. And if I can share my vision for what I want from On Your Mental, just long term, I talked with Jesse about this, Jesse Beavis, and we talked, just because he's helped me so much with setting everything up. We talked about your goal, or my goal. Ideally, if everything worked out, if this reached all the right people, if it had a number of people tuning into it, I want to inspire a generation of men to be more open with one another. I think there's so much value in that, especially with just seeing how kids nowadays, especially the younger generation, that's why I say kids, especially the younger generation, is exposed to so much more. I talked about that in the social media episode. Mental health issues are so much more prevalent. And in part, it's because they're more and more understood. And so people are recognizing emotions or behaviors as falling into these mental health issues. This stuff is becoming more and more prevalent in our lives. I hope that people can recognize in being open with one another and taking that risk to be vulnerable, there's a lot of value in that. I believe there's a lot of value in that. I think that you can, you bridge gaps that you didn't know could help somebody. When you have a good conversation, like when Jesse Dawson shared his story with me, that was the first time I had heard that. And I hadn't ever sort of pieced together my understanding of his life in that way. And it opened my eyes up to understanding depression more. It opened my eyes up to understanding what people might be going through in that. And it was an amazing story. And again, so brave of him to be sharing that. And thank you, Jesse. But yeah, that conversation changed my life. It changed my outlook on some things. And so that's what I took away from it. But hopefully people watching that conversation took away that kind of thing too. So that's my vision of On Your Mental, is I want my generation, I want the younger generations to, just be more open with each other, because there is so much to be gained from that. There's zero negative in sharing with somebody who you can share with. I recognize that not everybody has that, which is why I hope that these conversations can reach those people, especially people who don't already have this, because I've talked about my group of friends. I've talked about growing up with my mom, who I was very open with. I'm so lucky, and I recognize that I'm so lucky to have that. People who don't, I hope that they'll find this channel. I hope that they're going to find this content, and that they're going to get that experience through these conversations as well. So that's my vision for On Your Mental, is just a generation of men being more open, more emotionally available, more emotionally vulnerable, because I think that the benefits far outweigh the possible consequences of doing so. That being said, I want to talk about On Your Mental at all, and sort of where I want to go with that over the next while. I think it was a couple episodes now where I mentioned that I'm not necessarily doing weekly ones. Obviously, me putting this out, and then I'm probably going to have one out next Friday. That doesn't really seem like I'm not doing weekly ones at this point, but that change might come in a little bit. So what I'm thinking of doing is taking a little break after I think about episode 13, almost like seasons. So I kind of want to take a little bit of a break just to regroup and kind of gather my thoughts about what I want to do with On Your Mental, because I've started to think about the idea of doing more than even just podcasts. I think that there's more content to be made to benefit what I'm trying to do here, which is to encourage that openness between men. I'm going to take a little bit of a break, maybe just a couple weeks or something, just to really hone in on what I want to do and improve some things as well, right? Reflect on some of the feedback that's been provided over all this time, and just actually action it, right? So do something with all that feedback. I mean, earlier I talked about this, that the whole comparison mindset that I have sometimes. I think that fed into my need to, or that feeling that I had where I needed to get out an episode every week, because it was like, okay, this is what other content people do. They're pumping out multiple videos a week, and that's how they're going to get the following that they need to be able to get their message across. What I am realizing is that doesn't quite fit into my life yet. As much as I'd like to do that, I need to be able to pay rent. I need to be able to do more than just make podcasts at this point in my life for me to be able to live how I currently live. So this can't be the thing that I devote that much time to, because part of me wanting to do things a certain way with this podcast resulted in, for example, me needing to do a number of reshoots of episodes. I think out of the first 8 episodes, I think I reshot 4 or 5 of them. I also lost 2 episodes when I lost my laptop earlier. That all sort of compounded and made it feel like the work I was doing was harder than it needed to be. Because let's say I shot an episode on a Saturday. I record it. I think it's okay at the time. I start to review it a day or 2 later, and then I think, it's not quite good enough. Now I got to rush in another episode, get them back in for a reshoot, make the adjustments that I thought needed to be adjusted, and then get that episode out still by Friday, which meant like every day I'm working on this thing. And that's fine. That's cool. I know that for some people it's like, oh, that's the grind. You got to do that to be able to get to where you want to get to. I don't believe in that. I think that if I want to be proud of the content I'm putting out, I want to put more time into it, and time that is like deserving, not time just forced, if that makes sense. And I think the reason why I want that and why I want these episodes to be good is because I'm sharing other people's stories, right? When people are choosing to be open, like I mentioned, they're taking a risk. They are exposing themselves when they're being vulnerable. I honestly believe everybody's story is worth sharing. I think that everyone is their own unique collection of experiences. And so every time you share a perspective or you share your stories, your experiences of your own, there's someone else out there who's going to relate to it. There's going to be something else in what you've said. There's going to be something about something you've lived through where someone may go, okay, I can relate to that. I can connect with that. And that kind of feels like maybe what I'm going through right now, or something else that I've been through. And they might have thought they were alone in that feeling. And now your story is telling them that they weren't. And it can be simple things, right? We were talking about, Ben and I, for example, talking about body image. There was one comment on the video, and I know there's not a ton of comments on the video, whatever. But there was one comment on the video saying how it's nice to hear that like men also have these body image issues, because it is something that everybody goes through, right? I don't think I know anybody, I mean, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I know anybody that has gone through life thinking nothing wrong with their body. You know, I know that I've struggled with weight, I've struggled with my ears, I've struggled with my hair, I mean, my hairline, like sometimes that shit bothers me. I struggled with like being like somewhat gingery, especially throughout high school and elementary school. But anyways, yeah, if you can share something and someone else can relate to that and connect with it and feel like they're not alone in a feeling, I think that's huge. And so I want people to feel as though their stories are worth sharing, especially when they're coming on here and choosing to be vulnerable with me, because I do. I think every single one is. So that's why I wanted each episode to be like perfect, right? Because I wanted to do those stories justice. I wanted to do that topic justice. I wanted it to be worthwhile to listen to and to come away from afterwards. You know, something else that's come up, one thing that I've heard is, or that I've picked up on, and my cousin also pointed this out to me too. A lot of the stories that have been shared sometimes involve kind of like white knuckling the feelings that you're going through. That's something that men do often is grit your teeth and bear it, right? You just say fuck it and then go with it, deal with whatever emotion you're in and just push through. That's kind of been a theme of some of the conversations that I've had, and part of me wonders if maybe that comes out that way because the people that I'm having on so far are my friends, and so they're taking perhaps an even greater risk in choosing to be vulnerable with me because I know them. And it's like now they're showing a completely different side of themselves, and on top of also sharing that side of themselves with the world. So maybe sometimes the conversations that have been had focus more on just making it through an emotion rather than talking about what that emotion is. And so that's something I want to kind of adjust if possible going forward, especially after I take this little break and regroup. Is I really want to focus on that vulnerability piece and trying to encourage that a little bit more on the show. Like I've said, I think there's just tremendous value in that. So yeah, that's what I want to do with On Your Mental going forward. Is I want to really emphasize the vulnerability piece, because I think that is the most impactful part of On Your Mental. I think when you see those vulnerable stories, that's when someone who might be going through something similar, especially when it's something that's difficult or tough to go through, is going to hear the conversation and really benefit from it. Because those are the stories that you don't get to hear, right? You can look up whatever Instagram motivational shit you want to see about toughing it out and getting through something, but that's not the reality of life, you know? You can't always do that. And I think it's important to hear that from men who don't talk about that. Men should be more emotionally available and vulnerable. I truly believe it. So yeah, I recognize this episode has been a little bit slowed down, and that's fine. Especially if it's just me. I didn't think I was going to talk for this long, to be honest. And I don't know how much is actually going to end up making it into the episode, but we'll see. Thank you everyone for listening and watching if you're watching. Obviously, I'm looking at the camera, so y'all are watching. I hope you liked this. I hope that I was able to share just a bit of my own thoughts. So yeah, to kind of summarize how I look at On Your Mental, I don't want to rush content because I put this pressure on myself quite a bit. I have this whole comparison mind state and I want things to be a certain way. I want to allow myself the time to do those things right. And that's going to be the point of me taking a little break between a season, is to be able to get out better content for everybody who's watching and who's listening to this. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate you checking out this episode too. And for everybody who's listened all the way through, shout out to you for listening to me talk this whole time. I know normally there's another guest here, so maybe that's more interesting, but I thought it was my turn to be the vulnerable one and just talk about what I'm thinking about these days. So I'm excited for where On Your Mental is going to go. I'm excited for things to come and changes that I'm going to implement and wherever I'm going to take this. I hope you all are too. And I'm excited to just keep making new stuff for you. Anyways, that's enough from me. I'll see you all in the next episode. I'm actually really, really looking forward to the next one. It's going to be a special one because I got a big YouTuber coming on. Brandon Beavis is going to be the guest on the next episode. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Brandon Beavis Investing. Anybody who watches this maybe knows who he is too. Jesse Beavis' brother, actually. And then the next few episodes after that, the next 3, I guess, because we're going to get to 13 before taking the break. I've got some good stuff planned for that too. So yeah, I'll see you all soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.